I hate this. It's like a totally different amplifier. Next to me is a tower of Boss Katana Artist, because in this video, I'm going to review the Gen 3 and compare it to the Mark II to find out which one is the best. And if you don't have a katana yet, should you get the flagship model? And if you do have a katana, should you upgrade to the latest and potentially greatest version? Before we jump into this tower of artistry, I believe everybody should have at least a Katana Generation 1 50. You can pick them up for next to nothing these days, and if you don't have one, you will find some use for it in your guitar arsenal, But if you do want to spend some serious cash, and you do want apparently the best, the Katana Artist Gen 3 is currently the top model as of filming this. And one of the questions I have, and you've asked me, is how different is it to the Mark II? And is it worth getting this, or should we just stick with Mark II? And I really hope I can answer that in this video, or at least you can make a decision for yourself. So this is the Gen 3, and you'd be forgiven if you thought that was in fact just a Mark II. They look very, very similar on first glance, but there are some big differences. And at the least, you've got a different logo and a different kind of color and a different style. This is now modern. But the artist model in general has things the other models don't, and then the Gen 3 has things that the Katana Mark II doesn't have. So before we get into the sound samples and things like that, let's go over what the Gen 3 can do. The first, and maybe the biggest, is that the Generation 3 katanas have a new amp channel. The Generation 3 retains all the amps of Mark II, but adds the pushed amp. And this pushed amp is not quite clean, but it's not quite crunch either. It's somewhere just a little bit gritty. Boss say they've also improved the brown channel, this high gain amp style. One of the biggest new features of the Katana Generation 3 is this Bluetooth module. And this allows you to stream audio to the amp, so you could play along to backing tracks or learn a song or even watch this YouTube video on a Katana Generation 3. You can also control the amp and save and recall presets using the iOS and Android apps. And in Generation 3, only available on the head, the artist head, and the artist combo, is this bloom switch. This switch engages a dedicated circuit that apparently enhances the amp's feel, which delivers a sharper attack and more dynamic low-end response. We shall, of course, test that in the sound samples in this video in a little bit, so stick around for that. One of the other features of artists and all the other Gen 3 amps is they have a USB-C, which I know doesn't make that much difference to most people, and I'm not even sure if it's the right choice for a stage amp due to the size of it, but I do enjoy a USB-C connection. The Gen 3 artist also has a solo boost button, but that comes on every katana from the 50EX Gen 3 upwards. There's also a contour switch on the equalizer and a cab resonance knob just here. And that is also new on the Artist Gen 3, although some of that's also available on the other Gen 3 katanas. And if that's a little bit confusing for you, I'm sorry, but we've got original katana, Mark II, and then Gen 3, and then up to 7, I think, models within each range. So even I'm confused, and I've spent a lot of time with these amplifiers over the past couple of months, and this one over the past couple of years. And if you're completely new to Boss Katana, I guess I should go over some of the more general features. The Katana amps are a mixture of analog circuitry and digital programming, but there's no tubes or valves involved, even though they use the term tube logic sometimes. It's Boss's way of saying this is tube-like. On all of the Katana amps, you can save presets, you can upload and download stuff to and from the internet, and all the Artist series have Waza speakers, which are a step above the other speakers you get in the other katanas, which I think are fantastic anyway, but the Waza ones are supposed to be better. I really enjoy the sounds of them. They give you, in my opinion, a fuller, richer sound than the other katanas, but the other katanas have their own characteristics as well, especially the 50. That's a punky little thrashy thing. Now let's just explain what's going on here in terms of setup. On top is the Gen 3 Artist. In the middle is the Mark II Artist. And right at the bottom down here is the Waza 2x12 cab. And I can cable it so that I can put the head through the combo speaker, which is a 1x12, and I can put the combo through the combo speaker, of course. And then I can put both amps through the 2x12 just to see if there's a difference. The biggest fun thing for me to do in this video is going to be putting that through that and then testing with the same sound to see if they sound any different through the same speaker. So let's do that. All sounds are going to go through the speaker in the combo at first. We're going to do clean on the Gen 3 first, then clean on the Mark II. And I've set everything exactly the same. No reverb, just clean. Everything set pointing straight up at 12 o'clock. Set everything the same. I played things roughly the same. It sounds like there's more bass, more fullness in the Mark II, or rather that the Gen 3 is cutting a bit more, which I like. And here are the settings. It's not very exciting, but it is just a pure sound comparison. And now we'll do the same on the crunch, but we'll do the Mark II first. So what I'm going to do is switch that to crunch and that as well. And let's hear what this sounds like. So Mark II first, then Gen 3. Again, there are room for differences because I haven't got the same patch on them. I've just set them and eyeballed the controls, but I'm pretty flipping close. Again, I think that the Gen 3 is cutting a bit more. It could be something to do with the fact that this amp is not in the same cab. It doesn't sound miles and miles apart. I wonder if I could blind test that. But currently I prefer the Gen 3, but only just a little bit. And I'm not even sure if that's coming through on this mic. The mic, by the way, is the Lewitt MTP 440DM, which is a dynamic mic that I think sounds somewhere in between an SM57 and an E906 from Sennheiser. I love this mic. Right, let's try something a bit more high gain. Let's go brown, hissy brown, and I'll keep this guitar just so we can keep everything else the same. This is the brown sound. Everything stays the same on the panel. I've just switched the channel to brown. Right, that sounds different. At first I had this one on the crunch, so I quickly switched it over to the brown sound. Come here. They're both hissy because I've factory reset them and not put the noise gate on. There is a noise gate in both of these, so if you didn't know, now you know. Right, for me, the Gen 3 sounded clearer and more articulate. I'm going to turn that off for a sec so it's not so hissy. The Gen 3 was nicer to play. I don't know if it's going to sound any different to you, but in the room, Gen 3 sounds different. It sounds more, it's nicer to the ear. It's like the sharp edges have been rounded off. Whereas the Artist Mark II sounded good, like I know it well, but it lacked a little bit of icing on top. If I hadn't heard Gen 3, I wouldn't be complaining about that, that's for sure. Now, I want to know what this bloom button does. Where is it? Just there. Okay, so let's plug back into the Gen 3 and mess around with the bloom. I genuinely don't know what's going to happen. Bloom on. It's like a totally different amplifier. Come away. I don't know if I like it because I haven't changed any of the settings. Suddenly it got all bright and like a bit scratchy. I'm going to try that on a different sound now, maybe something more bluesy. But that opened up the amp. I don't know if bloom is the correct term in sense of when a tube amp blooms. But let's find out. I really dig that. So let's go pushed, this new push channel, and change that onto, no, hang on. Yeah, so without bloom first. Let's put a bit of reverb on as well. Let's add the bloom. Bloom off. Bloom on. It sounds like there's been a compressor on there when the bloom is off, and then when you put the bloom on, it sounds like the compressor's been turned off, and it's letting through all this more natural dynamics, and it's definitely more touch sensitive. I don't ever want to turn that off, ever, unless I'm playing thick power chords, such as in Bloom Night by Nirvana, and you just want something constant. If you're playing lead and something soft, that bloom switch, mwah! Now let's have a look at the resonance knob, which is turned off for everything so far. It's not the same as cab resonance, which is over here, that the Mark II also has. The resonance knob apparently enhances the definition of the low end. So I'm going to put something through this pretty low. So in fact, no, I was going to go drop tune. Let's not go drop tune. Let's just put it on the neck pickup, and I'll play something I'll play an open D with a drop D chord. Then as I'm playing that, I'll adjust the resonance knob. So we do off, a quarter, half, 3/4, and a full. This is what it's doing, but what it sounds like it's doing is that anything below 12 o'clock is cutting some bass frequencies, and anything above 12 o'clock is boosting them. Have another listen. There's definitely more bass here than there is over there, and I kind of prefer it around about there, like for clarity. I don't know if that's a feature that I need. It's certainly one that I appreciate having, but one that I would normally get there with the EQ. I guess the difference is if you've got your EQ set and then you get to here we go. You get to a show and you find that the amp just sounds too bassy. And rather than go in and re-EQ every patch or go into the global EQ and sort that out, on the fly, you can just turn that knob and give you less bass. Or if you're in some venue that is lacking bass, you can boost that bass frequency. At least that's what I think it's doing here. Right, I want to have a listen to this pushed amp setting because this is the one that I've been playing most in my free time, and I haven't done it with this guitar yet. This is a Baum, what's it called? A Carve Baum Vega. It's a very nice guitar with two P90s. I'm having a sort of P90s phase at the moment. Right, yeah, let's have a look at the pushed amp setting, and I'm going to try it with some other guitar just, to get a different feel. Let's use this Premier Bedford from D'Angelico. So that's the push channel with just over a quarter of gain. And yeah, I've done nothing to the EQ, but there is a bunch of reverb on there. That was Bloom off, by the way. Let's try it with Bloom on. I know we're doing pushed amp section, but that Bloom setting is just brilliant. And I have some very strong feelings about that. Right, I'm going to try it with a Strat because I know that these P90s are not everybody's cup of tea. So everybody knows what a Strat sounds like. Let's do that. That was really fun to play. I've added a bunch more reverb. It's up there now. And now let's turn Bloom off. What? I say it again, I don't ever want to turn this Bloom off. I don't know if Boss have really pushed this Bloom function, but that seems to, for me, I thought the pushed amp was the biggest thing, my favorite thing about the new Gen 3 katanas, but the bloom is where it's at, and you can only get it on the head artist. Yeah, the head and the artists. Darn. Okay. Let's hear both of these now through the 2x12. I've got the same mic on there. It's in a slightly different position, but I've tried to get it in the same position. It's down there. My favorite position, which is roughly halfway between the center of the speaker, the dust cap, and the edge. So it's right sort of in the middle. I got to cable that again. So we're now hearing it through this beast over here, the 2x12 Waza. Just going to do a comparison between the two amps, but I can't because the Mark II doesn't have the push channel. So let's go for crunch. No, let's go for clean. Test it on clean first. And just because we can, let's switch both amps over to vintage cab resonance. So let's do Gen 3 clean and then Mark II clean. There's a kind of hollowness in the Mark II, or rather there's a more of a fullness in the Gen 3. And I did have the bloom turned on in Gen 3, and of course there is no bloom in Mark II. I did that purposefully because, as I said, I don't think I'm ever going to turn that bloom off. And yeah, it's more rounded, it's more interesting to the ear through the Gen 3. I hope this is coming out on the microphone. In the room, it is very noticeable as a player. So my tip here is never turn that switch off once you've turned it on. You're going to miss it. Let's try the same test, but on the crunch channel, so we get a little bit dirty and a little bit SGE. So crunch, where is it? There we go. And crunch up on there, skipping the push channel up there, and see what it sounds like. So Mark II first. I keep getting confused between Gen 2 and Mark III, and that's really annoying, boss. Mark II first, then Gen 3. I hate this. I hate that Boss have made the Gen 3 better, because I went into this video not really knowing what I was going to, well, never knowing what I was going to say, but not really thinking that Gen 3 was worth it, to be honest with you. always honest with you, but that's an expression. I really didn't think that there's so much going on in the Mark II Artist. Like, I was thinking that Boss have kind of run out of ideas, and then they just needed to release a new katana range. It certainly seems more that way for the 50 and the 100, but when you get to the Artist and the 100 head, this bloom switch. Victor, who's editing this video, hello. I wonder how many times I've said bloom in this video, and if Victor doesn't answer, then someone in the comments can, because bloom, bloom, bloom is blooming brilliant. Laughing at my own joke. It's not a joke. Yeah, Boss, I hate that. I haven't even gone into all the effects and everything because there's so many other videos doing all that, and there's so many other resources you can see for that. I wanted to do something that I hadn't seen elsewhere on YouTube, and that was really focus on these basic differences. And I hate that one little button up there and a new channel has made so much difference for me. If you're not new to this channel, then you'll know that I use the Boss amps a lot when doing pedal demos and reviews and guitar demos and reviews. And I've come to think that the Artist was a little bit too cumbersome, a little bit too big, and I was trying to switch over really to the 100 head. But now all these controls and knobs and switches, I know why I like it. It's because it's there. Firstly, it's on the front, which is where all controls of all amps should be, so you've got to hurt your back bending over. And secondly, you've got so much control on the fly. I almost thought it's too much. And for a beginner, I think that's too much control over an amp. So if you've never bought an amp before in your life, I think this is the wrong move. However, a 50 is a good move. And if you've never really dealt with amps that do lots of things, this is potentially so complicated, so confusing, that I'm worried that it's going to alienate some people. But if you do want control over your tone, and you have a katana already, and that katana is your basis of your sound, or one of the basis of your one of the core tone components. Oh my goodness, I'm really tripping myself up now. If you use your katana a lot and you want even more tweakability, and you just want to have that little push over the edge and go to 11, I hate to say this, but the Gen 3 is worth it in that respect. If you're new to katanas and new to amps in general, I think both of these amps are a little bit more than you require. I cannot imagine spending my first day of guitar plugging into one of these and thinking, what does all that do? Because I had an amp which was just gain, volume, treble, bass, volume, bass, middle, treble, and a pushy innie for a second channel. And that already confused me. What I'm trying to say is, without going into the fact that the Artists and the katanas have USB-C recording and all that jazz, and the Tone Studio, and the downloadable patches and the uploadable patches, and all the other things that you can do with this, like plugging in an external cab, DIing out with an XLR, using the foot switch, the GAFC thing that can do all these marvelous things. The Boss Katana Artist is one of the best amps ever made, and the Boss Katana Artist Gen 3 is the best of the Artists, and only you can decide if it's worth the extra money. The only thing it's missing is one of these. This is a clip-on tuner, and the Boss Katana does not have a tuner inside it. And I know this is old news, and I know it's kind of a joke, but there is zero reason why the Katana shouldn't have, speaking as a person who knows not what they're talking about engineering, but in terms of lights and indicators, you've got all these lights up here. That could be a tuner. You know, like you're in tune, you're slightly sharp, you're really sharp, you're in tune, you're slightly flat, you're slightly flat, for example. And they could even illustrate that on the GAFC as well and have a tuner at your feet. And now the Gen 3 is more powerful than the Mark II. It must have the computing power. I'll just get off my soapbox for a minute, but I think that's possible. And I think if it had that, if that's all they change in Gen 4 or Mark 4 or version 4, as they're probably going to call it, to change it again, I don't think that's enough to upgrade to that. But bottom line, the Gen 3 has enough in it for me to want that more than Mark II, and for me now to look down on Mark II, and I hate that I feel that way. because I don't like the idea of spending more money or recommending that you do. Okay, no, here's the bottom line. If you don't have a katana and you're new to guitars, don't get either of the artists. Get a 50 or a 100. That is plenty. If you are not new to amps and stuff and you want a katana and you're used to lots of pedals and you've been around a while, get the Artist Gen 3, unless this is way out of your price range. A Mark II is still fantastic, but the Gen 3 tops it. Well done, boss. All right, there are links to the katanas and all the other stuff that I've used in this video in the video description and first comment. A big thanks to Boss for sponsoring this video and getting me to understand why they've done Gen 3. YouTube thinks you should watch that video down there, so go and prove them right or wrong, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.